Some images on the internet become famous for no clear reason. A smiling dog, a distorted face, a cursed children's show. Millions of people have seen these images, but most have no idea where they actually came from. So, let's find the real origins behind them. Few internet horror images are as recognizable as Smile Dog. A distorted husky-like creature, human teeth, a stretched smile, and eyes that don't feel natural. The image became connected to a creepypasta known as smile.jpg. According to the story, people who received the image would become obsessed with it. They would see it in their dreams, hear whispers, and eventually feel forced to spread the image to someone else. The phrase, "spread the word," became one of the most recognizable parts of the story. But unlike many creepypastas, there was never one fully confirmed original version. The story evolved across forums, reposts, and creepypasta websites throughout the late 2000s. Different versions changed details, but the image always stayed the center of attention. And that's because the image itself felt wrong. Not realistic enough to be believable, but not fake enough to feel harmless. The actual origin of the image is still somewhat unclear. No confirmed creator has ever publicly taken credit for it. Most people believe it was created as a manipulated digital artwork sometime in the early internet horror era, likely around the mid to late 2000s. Many people originally believed the image was connected to a real cursed file online. Some even claimed the original image looked different every time they saw it. But in reality, there is no evidence that the image was supernatural. It was simply an internet horror image that became famous because of the atmosphere around it. And that atmosphere was powerful. The low quality, the dark room, the unnatural smile. It looked exactly like the kind of image you weren't supposed to open alone at night. And that's what made Smile Dog spread across the internet so quickly. One of the strangest images to come out of early internet horror culture is often called Pinhead by creepypasta communities. Not the Hellraiser character, but the black and white face with hollow eyes, stretched skin, and an expression that barely looks human. The image became heavily associated with Zalgo-style internet horror in the late 2000s and early 2010s. People used it in cursed image compilations, horror forum threads, and edited creepypasta videos. Over time, the image gained a reputation online. Some people claimed it came from a disturbing real photograph. Others believed it was linked to dark web horror stories. But most of those rumors were fake. The real origin is much less supernatural. The image appears to have been digitally edited and spread through early horror forums and image boards during the rise of internet creepypasta culture. Its exact creator has never been fully confirmed. And because the image was reposted so many times, the original upload became difficult to trace. That uncertainty became part of the horror. Nobody knew where it came from. Nobody knew what it actually showed. And that made people create their own explanations. Some believed it was a distorted human face. Others thought it was generated from damaged video footage or old photography. But the image became popular for a simpler reason. It triggered the uncanny valley. It looked human enough to recognize, but wrong enough to make people uncomfortable immediately. And during the early creepypasta era, that was enough to turn a single image into an internet legend. The Grinning Man is one of the few creepypasta figures inspired by a much older urban legend. Unlike many internet horror stories, this one did not begin online. The modern version of the Grinning Man is connected to reports from the 1960s involving a strange entity known as Indrid Cold. One of the most famous stories came from a man named Woodrow Derenberger in West Virginia in 1966. He claimed he encountered a tall man with an unnatural grin and strange behavior standing near a road at night. According to the story, the figure spoke calmly, smiled constantly, and behaved almost human, but not completely. That detail became the most disturbing part. Not that the figure looked monstrous, but that it looked almost normal. Years later, internet horror communities rediscovered the story. The image most people now associate with the Grinning Man, a pale figure with a huge smile and glowing eyes, was not part of the original reports. It was created later through edited artwork and horror illustrations online. Over time, the internet transformed the older urban legend into a creepypasta figure. And like many modern internet horror characters, the image became more famous than the original story itself. What made the Grinning Man so unsettling wasn't gore or violence. It was the idea of something pretending to be human, smiling constantly, watching silently, and acting just slightly wrong. The kind of fear that feels believable because it doesn't rely on monsters, only behavior that feels unnatural. One of the strangest viral horror images from the early internet involved the Teletubbies, a children's TV show that became unexpectedly connected to cursed image culture online. The image usually showed distorted or darkened versions of the Teletubbies characters standing in unsettling environments. Sometimes their faces were edited, sometimes their eyes were removed, and sometimes the image quality itself made them feel disturbing. These images became popular during the late 2000s and early 2010s, when cursed images and edited childhood characters started spreading across forums, YouTube videos, and chain posts. Many people online claimed the images came from lost episodes or banned footage, but almost all of those stories were completely fake. Most of the images were simply edited screenshots taken from the original TV show. Some were darkened, others had distorted faces or altered lighting added afterward. But the reason they became popular is actually psychological. The Teletubbies already felt strange to many people. Large empty fields, minimal dialogue, unnatural movement, and oversized costumes with expressionless faces. Even without edits, the show already had an uncanny atmosphere. So when internet users began distorting the images and adding horror stories to them, it felt believable surprisingly quickly. The internet turned something harmless into something people remembered as disturbing. Not because the original show was secretly evil, but because nostalgia becomes much easier to twist into horror once the internet gets involved.